Okay, so I'm going to give you some tips on doing your own Euro mounts. Obviously, I'm not a professional at it, but to save the $100 to $150 for each mount, if you're going to start doing one or two a year, it's kind of nice to be able to boil your own. Say you did it, you get to scrape the meat off, then boil it, and then pressure wash it and get it ready for a custom mount. I cut a tree down that the arrow had stuck into after it went through the deer. That's the back mount. I bought a couple of oak mounts to put these on. I'm not sure what I'm going to do my Nebraska buck on, but I'll give you a few tips on how to save yourself some heartache. I mean, you've dreamt all year, all decade to get a dream buck. I've got some decent bucks here that I've shot in the last 3 or 4 years, and I did the Euros on all of them myself. Like I said, I'm not a professional, but I can give you some tips. All the other videos that you watch show you how to boil, how to pressure wash, whatever. And I watched all of those, but they didn't really go into detail where to be careful and what not to do to destroy your buck, as far as the ones that I saw, because you can't get it back. You can't redo it. You can get one of those fake skulls from Home Depot, or not Home Depot, Cabela's or Fleet Farm, but I like the true real skull that it came with. So let me flip this camera around and I will give you some tips to save you some heartache. Okay, so for the first point, obviously, like I said, you're gonna boil it. That helps get the meat tender and start pulling it off the bone. What I do is I boil the whole skull, and you should just let the water be up to the bottom of the antlers, unless you're gonna truly protect the antlers pretty well. I'll go into that in a second. And then what you do is when it starts getting soft, you can scrape a lot of the meat off, but then you start pressure washing it, and they have different nozzles on the pressure washer, and the one that I use is like the drill, the number 1. It just, or I think it's called a 0 degree, and you can just drill and hammer all of this meat and flesh and hair and everything off here. I mean, you could do this all day long here. You can kind of see this guy has a wound that kind of healed over in his skull. Is pretty cool. But you can nail this pretty hard all the way up through here. You can pressure wash this. This is all really hard. Up inside, you can pressure wash with the 0 degree. Once you get to the nasal cavity, you can see this. I blew this half out before I realized what I was doing, and I'm like, oh no. So you come down here, you can see everything's left intact. This is my Nebraska buck. I was very careful on this one. So the nasal cavity is very, very fragile. You'll never get that look back if you blow that out. So I let that one boil a little bit longer, and I came off way far back instead of putting the nozzle right next to it. And then sometimes I used a different degree angle to have more of a flush out. Also back in the socket, you can see I blew that out on the first one that I did, and that's really fragile back there, just like in the nozzle. You'll never get that back. You don't really see it hanging on the wall. I just don't like to know that it's there. You can see in this one, it's all intact back in there. I learned a lot of lessons on the first 2 that I did. So that's the soft area. Now, another area that's soft that I learned on this one is, you can see the pitted right behind the teeth there. I started blowing that apart with that 0 degree pressure washer, so I started to back off on that. Like I said, you'll never see that hanging though on the wall. I just don't like to know that I damaged it. So you'll have to be careful where you do it. You can drill as hard as you want on the antlers as well. Obviously, the teeth, underneath the teeth, up on the top of the mouth. Here you just pull everything out. You pressure wash in there, and then you get up there and just pull out with the needle nose pliers. But that's it for the pressure washing issues. This one, I used too much time. No, let's see, it's this one. Too much time in the boiling pot. I thought, well, the other ones took forever to pressure wash, so I'll just boil all the meat off longer. But the only thing that did to me was separate the skull, which I don't like that look. It's got more of a separation than the other ones, and it made it really chalky. Feels almost like pitted. I'm not really happy. I love this buck with the long brow tines, but I'm not really happy because of the separated skull. I boiled it too long. So that's one thing to do, to know. All of these I just used soap on to get the fat and the grease to pull off of the bone, except for this last one. My best buck yet, antler wise, you can see. I used hydrogen peroxide no, not on this one. I used OxyClean on this one and soap. And I got lazy, and when I walked away, the skull slid into the water, and the bubbles from the OxyClean and soap and hot water came up to here and started bleaching my antlers. So that's something you can take electrical tape, go real tight around here, and then you can use tin foil over that as well, or saran wrap. So just be very careful. And my last tip, I don't know if you can see the red in the fissures and the black in the fissures. I let this one sit in the freezer. Yes, the freezer. My wife allowed that for 6 weeks. And so the meat and the blood and the tissue all started soaking into the skull. I am gonna try and bleach these with Volumizer 40 that I ordered off Amazon, should be here this week. But if you notice, all of these skulls I did in the first day to week. I think I did them all like the same day or the second day after shooting them. And there's no staining on the top of the skull like this one. So be careful of the antlers if you're gonna use OxyClean. Be careful of the skull look. If you're gonna let it wait too long, you're gonna have to bleach it. Be careful of the nasal cavities and in the eyes if you're gonna be blasting that with a 0-degree pressure washer. And don't boil it too long, or you're gonna get extra separation on the skull and the pitting and the chalkiness. So that's what I have to tell you about tips to save yourself some heartache when you've been dreaming for these bucks for years and decades, and you finally get them. You think, oh, I'll do the Euro mount myself, be proud of myself, and then you ruin it. It's not going to be a happy day. So good luck hunting, and good luck with your mounts.